Tonight, I'm sharing what may be the biggest shake-up to Australian skilled migration in more than 2 decades, and if you're aiming for permanent residency through the 189 skilled independent visa, this update could completely change your strategy. What the government has quietly done behind the scenes will surprise you, and for many occupations, it explains exactly why invitations have suddenly stopped. If you or someone you know is waiting for a 189 invitation, you need to hear this all the way through. Welcome back to Ounce Immigration, your trusted source for clear, up-to-date Australian immigration news. If this is your first time here, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with anyone planning to migrate to Australia, because what I'm about to explain could save you years of waiting and thousands of dollars. On this channel, we break down complex immigration policies into plain English so you can make smarter decisions about your future in Australia. Before we dive into the major policy change, let me quickly share a real story that highlights how stressful and confusing the visa process can be if you don't have the right information. This week, Australian media reported on a British woman who received her Australian Federal Police check and was shocked to discover a criminal history that she says she never committed. The timing couldn't have been worse, because she had already received an invitation to apply for permanent residency and only had 60 days to lodge her application. Like many skilled visa applicants, she panicked, thinking that without a clean AFP check, her application would be refused or invalid. This is an important reminder for anyone applying for points-tested visas like the 189. You do not need to submit your AFP police check to lodge a valid application. As long as you apply within the 60-day window, you can usually sort out issues like this later during processing. Too many people lose valuable opportunities simply because of misunderstandings or fear, so please don't let misinformation cost you your future in Australia. Now, on a lighter note, Australia also made global headlines this week by becoming the first country in the world to introduce a social media ban for children under 16. Platforms like TikTok and Instagram are now off limits for kids, and the story was picked up internationally, including by CNN. Love it or hate it, it sends a powerful message about how seriously Australia takes child well-being. Honestly, if there was ever a moment to promote Australia as a destination for families, this was it. Imagine telling the world, come to Australia, where kids still go outside, play sport, and grow up safely. We were pioneers in seatbelt laws, and now once again, Australia is leading the way. But let's get back to why you're really here. The most significant policy shift to affect skilled migration visas since they were introduced more than 20 years ago. While there has been no official change to the points test yet, and we expect that could happen at any time, what has already changed is how the Department of Home Affairs decides who actually gets invited for the 189 skilled independent visa. This change has not been openly announced. It has come to light through a series of Freedom of Information requests, and it finally explains why so many occupations have stopped receiving invitations altogether. The system is more complex than ever, but I'm going to break it down in simple terms so you can understand exactly where you stand. Under the new policy, the number of 189 invitations available for each occupation is no longer considered in isolation. Instead, it is now directly affected by how many people in that occupation were granted visas in the previous financial year through other skilled pathways. These include the Employer Nomination Scheme 186 visa, the Skilled Employer-Sponsored Regional 494 visa, and the state and territory-nominated visas such as the 190 and 491. This system has been operating since the start of the current financial year, but until now, it has effectively been kept secret. The department has introduced a new formula to calculate an occupation ceiling for the 189 visa, and this formula represents a fundamental shift in how invitations are issued. In simple terms, the government looks at the total number of people working in a particular occupation in Australia, multiplies that number by a tier percentage, and then subtracts the total number of visas granted for that occupation in the previous year under employer-sponsored, state-nominated, and regional programs. Whatever is left becomes the maximum number of 189 invitations that occupation can receive for the year. Here's where it gets critical. If the number of employer-sponsored and state-nominated grants is already higher than the calculated ceiling, that occupation is effectively shut out of the 189 program for the rest of the financial year. No matter how high your points are, no matter how strong your profile looks, there may simply be no invitations left. This has massive implications, especially for occupations like IT, accounting, and other roles that employers heavily sponsor. The Employer Nomination Scheme is demand-driven, which means there is no fixed cap. Employers can sponsor as many workers as they need, and when those numbers stack up, they can completely wipe out the allocation for independent skilled visas. I was personally curious why certain trades, like motor mechanics, suddenly disappeared from recent 189 invitation rounds. When you look at the data, it becomes clear. Motor mechanics were one of the most popular occupations under the temporary skills shortage pathway, which feeds directly into permanent employer sponsorship. As a result, the occupation ceiling for independent migration has essentially been used up. Another key element of this new system is the introduction of a 4-tier occupation priority structure. Every occupation on the skilled list is now assigned to one of 4 tiers, and each tier has a different percentage multiplier that directly affects how many invitations are available. Tier 1 is the highest priority and includes occupations that are considered highly specialized, scarce, and critical to Australia's long-term needs. These are roles that require many years of training and expertise, such as medical specialists, diagnostic radiographers, optometrists, speech pathologists, intensive care specialists, pediatric surgeons, pathologists, and registered nurses, particularly in aged care and mental health. Tier 2 includes occupations that align with current government priority processing settings. These include childcare centre managers, early childhood teachers, secondary school teachers, special education teachers, psychologists, and social workers. These roles are seen as essential to community well-being and future workforce stability. Tier 3 is made up of diverse occupations across engineering, construction, science, trades, and even professional sports. This includes construction project managers, electronics and environmental engineers, geophysicists, veterinarians, welders, joiners, lift mechanics, and even professional footballers. Tier 4 contains occupations considered oversupplied, such as accountants, ICT business analysts, ICT security specialists, and chefs. These occupations receive the lowest priority under the new system. Each tier is assigned a percentage that determines how large the occupation ceiling can be. Tier 1 receives 4%, Tier 2 receives 2%, Tier 3 receives 1%, and Tier 4 receives just 0.5%. This percentage is applied to the total number of people employed in that occupation across Australia. Let me give you a real example using early childhood teachers, based on figures revealed through Freedom of Information requests. At the end of the last financial year, there were approximately 79,000 early childhood teachers working in Australia. As a Tier 2 occupation, the ceiling percentage is 2%. That results in a total occupation ceiling of around 1,580 visa grants for the year. From that number, the government then subtracts all visas already granted in the previous year under employer-sponsored, state-nominated, and regional programs. In this case, around 556 early childhood teachers were granted visas through those pathways. That leaves just over 1,000 potential invitations available under the 189 skilled independent visa for the entire financial year. This is exactly how the new system works, occupation by occupation. And when you apply this formula to heavily sponsored fields like IT, the outcome becomes very clear. So many IT professionals have already received permanent residency through employer and state pathways that the remaining allocation for independent visas is effectively zero. At the moment, we don't yet have complete grant data for every occupation, but once those figures are released, it will be possible for applicants to estimate their realistic chances under the 189 program. This is something we will continue to break down here on Ounce Immigration, so make sure you stay subscribed. The key takeaway from this massive policy shift is this: the Australian government is clearly prioritising migrants who are already living and working in Australia, particularly those sponsored by employers or state governments. Independent skilled migration is no longer the primary pathway it once was, especially for oversupplied occupations. If you're offshore, or if your occupation sits in Tier 3 or Tier 4, you need to rethink your strategy now, not later. That may mean exploring employer sponsorship, regional pathways, or alternative visa options instead of waiting endlessly for a 189 invitation that may never come. If you need personalized advice, professional guidance can make all the difference. We are always here to help you understand your options and plan the best pathway forward. You can book a consultation online, or if your situation is urgent, pick up the phone and speak to a professional who understands these changes inside out. As we head into the holiday season, we'll only be closing briefly over Christmas and New Year, but we'll be back with more updates as soon as new information becomes available. If you found this video helpful, please like it, subscribe to Ounce Immigration, and share it with friends, family, or colleagues who are dreaming of Australia. Staying informed is the most powerful tool you have in today's fast-changing immigration landscape. Thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next update.